The little girl hears the guard speaking German and runs to the millionaire in the parking lot. With a trembling voice, she begs him not to get into the armored car. They laughed. But she insisted, and he ordered a sweep. What they found under the seat would change the course of that night forever. Robert Chandler observed San Francisco from the 52nd floor of the Chandler Tower. The city sprawled before him like a miniature model he could manipulate at will. At 54, he commanded an empire that spanned technology, real estate, and financial investments across 3 continents. Fortune magazine had called him the architect of modern capitalism, a title he neither rejected nor embraced, merely accepting it as fact. "The Morgan acquisition papers are ready for your signature," said Vanessa, his chief of staff, placing a leather portfolio on his glass desk. She stood with perfect posture, her expression betraying nothing of their earlier heated debate about the aggressive corporate takeover. "And the board?" Robert asked without turning from the window. Rain had begun to fall, distorting the city lights into watercolor smears against the darkening sky. 7 in favor, 2 abstaining. The vote passed as expected. Robert nodded. "And the employees?" "HR has the termination packages prepared. Approximately 30% of Morgan's workforce will be released within the first quarter. The rest will be evaluated for retention." "People, Vanessa. Not workforce. People with families." She paused, recalibrating. This occasional display of sentiment was new from him, disconcerting but not yet alarming. "Of course, the people will receive standard severance packages." Robert finally turned. His tailored suit bore not a single wrinkle, his silver-streaked hair perfectly combed, his blue eyes sharp and evaluating. He'd built his reputation on emotional detachment and surgical precision in business decisions. Competitors feared him. Financial analysts worshipped him. Employees respected but rarely loved him. "Double the severance for anyone with over 5 years of service," he said, picking up his fountain pen, a Mont Blanc Meisterstück, the same model he'd used to sign his first $1 million deal 27 years ago. "That's an additional $8 million, Vanessa said, her tone neutral but her eyes widening slightly. "I'm aware." He signed the documents without further comment. The intercom buzzed. "Mr. Chandler, your security team is ready. The helicopter will depart in 15 minutes. "Thank you, Claire." He gathered his coat and briefcase. "Vanessa, you'll oversee the transition team. I want daily reports. The Summit Hotel has confirmed your penthouse suite. Will you need anything else for your stay in Seattle?" "Just the usual protocol." The usual protocol was exhaustive. Advanced security teams, swept rooms, private entrances, vetted staff, and the constant presence of his security detail. Former military specialists headed by Marcus Reed, a man whose resume included 10 years with the Secret Service, protecting 2 presidents. In the private elevator descending to the helipad, Robert checked his messages on a custom-encrypted smartphone. 5 missed calls from his ex-wife regarding their son's upcoming graduation, which Robert had already arranged to attend, despite a conflicting shareholders' meeting. 3 messages from board members kissing his ass over the Morgan acquisition. 1 from the mayor about an upcoming charity gala. The rhythm of his life had become predictable. Ruthless efficiency punctuated by helicopter rides, 5-star hotels, and decisions that affected thousands of lives. When had he last felt something unexpected? Something real? The elevator opened directly to the helipad, where Marcus Reed waited beside the helicopter, raindrops beading on his black trench coat. "All clear, sir. Weather's deteriorating in Seattle, but we'll beat the worst of it." "Thank you, Marcus." As they boarded, Robert caught a glimpse of himself reflected in the helicopter's polished exterior, a man encased in layers of security, wealth, and isolation. For a flicker of a moment, he wondered if those layers protected him or imprisoned him. The flight to Seattle lasted less than 2 hours. From the air, the city glowed like a web of light against the dark waters of Puget Sound. Robert reviewed the presentation he would deliver tomorrow to Seattle's tech leaders, a gathering of the brightest minds in cloud computing, artificial intelligence, and quantum technology. The summit, as it was called informally, happened twice yearly, rotating between tech hubs. This iteration would focus on quantum computing applications, a field where Chandler Innovations held several breakthrough patents. The helicopter landed on the Summit Hotel's private helipad. Marcus exited first, scanning the area before signaling for Robert to follow. The practiced choreography continued through a private entrance, a dedicated elevator, and into the penthouse suite that occupied the hotel's entire top floor. "All rooms have been swept and cleared," Marcus reported. "The staff has been vetted. Mr. Cooper from local security will brief us on tomorrow's venue in 15 minutes. Robert nodded, moving to the floor-to-ceiling windows. Seattle's skyline, dominated by the Space Needle, stretched before him. Rain streaked the glass, creating the illusion that the city itself was melting into the night. "Will you need anything else, sir?" asked the suite's dedicated butler, a thin man with impeccable posture. "Just dinner in an hour, whatever the chef recommends." Left alone, Robert loosened his tie and poured himself 2 fingers of 30-year-old Macallan. The amber liquid caught the light as he swirled it gently. Success tasted like this, smooth, refined, expensive. So why did it sometimes feel hollow? His phone rang, his son Alexander. "Dad, got a minute?" "For you, always." The formality dropped from Robert's voice. Alexander was 22, in his final year at Stanford, studying environmental engineering, much to the disappointment of board members who'd assumed the Chandler heir would pursue business or law. "I've been thinking about graduation. Could we skip the formal dinner with your executives? Maybe just us and Mom somewhere quiet instead?" Robert hesitated. The dinner had been planned for months. Board members, key investors, strategic partners, all expecting FaceTime with the Chandler dynasty. "Of course," he said finally. "Whatever you want, Alex, it's your day." The relief in his son's voice was palpable. "Thanks, Dad, that means a lot." After they hung up, Robert stood motionless, the untouched whiskey in his hand. When had his relationship with his only child become so formal that a simple request for family time seemed like a breakthrough? The summit meetings proceeded with clinical efficiency the next day. Robert delivered his keynote on quantum computing's implications for cybersecurity to thunderous applause. He shook hands with Silicon Valley pioneers, engaged in polite combat with competitors, and signed preliminary agreements for 3 new ventures. By evening, as the summit's closing dinner began in the hotel's grand ballroom, he felt the familiar fatigue that came not from physical exertion, but from the constant performance of power. "Impressive speech today," said Lawrence Reynolds, CEO of a rival tech firm, sliding into the seat beside him. "Though I noticed you sidestepped the ethical implications of quantum decryption capabilities." Robert offered a practiced smile. "Ethics is for the philosophy department, Lawrence. We're in the business of innovation." "Still the same, Chandler?" Reynolds chuckled. "All business, no sentiment. Sentiment doesn't pay dividends." "No?" Then explain why Chandler Foundation just donated $50 million to educational programs in underserved communities. "Hardly a profit-maximizing move." Robert took a sip of water. The foundation's activities were not widely publicized. "Tax advantages. Plus, we need educated workers." Reynolds didn't look convinced, but was interrupted by the arrival of more tech executives at their table. The dinner dragged on. 7 courses of molecular gastronomy paired with wines. Robert barely tasted. His mind drifted to tomorrow's schedule: breakfast with Seattle's mayor, a tour of Chandler's local offices, then back to San Francisco by afternoon. "Mr. Chandler?" A staff member approached discreetly. "Your security chief asked to see you. He's by the east entrance." Robert excused himself, navigating between tables of the wealthy and powerful with practiced ease. Marcus waited near a service door, his expression unreadable as always. "What is it?" "Standard protocol, sir. We're doing a final sweep of all exit routes before departure tomorrow. Also, there's been a staffing change in the kitchen. New dishwasher started today. Wasn't on our vetted list. We've conducted a background check. He's clean, but I wanted to inform you." Robert almost smiled at the thoroughness. "Thank you, Marcus. Is that all?" "Yes, sir. We'll have the car ready at 7 a.m. tomorrow." As Robert turned to return to the dinner, something caught his eye: a small figure sitting alone on a bench in the staff corridor. A child, perhaps 7 or 8 years old, with curly brown hair and a wrinkled blue dress. She swung her legs, which didn't reach the floor, and flipped through a worn book. "Who's that?" Robert asked. Marcus glanced over. "The new dishwasher's daughter. Lily, I believe. Her father is Jack Miller. Widower military veteran needed the job urgently. Hotel management made an exception to let her wait here during his shift. We've verified their identities. Robert studied the girl, so small against the institutional beige walls, so out of place in the luxury hotel. She looked up suddenly, meeting his gaze with surprising directness. Her eyes were intelligent, unintimidated. "Hello," she said simply. "Hello," Robert replied, caught off guard by the simple greeting. "You're the important man everyone's talking about, the one who makes computers think like people." Despite himself, Robert felt a smile forming. "Something like that. And you're Lily?" She nodded. "I'm waiting for my dad. He washes the plates you eat from." The statement, delivered without resentment or awe, just matter-of-fact observation, struck Robert strangely. When was the last time someone had spoken to him without agenda, without fear or favor-seeking? "That's an important job," he said. "I know. Dad says every job matters." Marcus cleared his throat discreetly, a reminder of the dinner waiting for him. "Enjoy your book, Lily," Robert said, turning to leave. "It's about a girl who saves a kingdom," Lily replied. "Nobody thinks she can do it because she's small, but she's the only one who can." Robert paused, looking back at her. "Sounds like a good story. The best ones are about people who surprise you." With those words lingering in his mind, Robert returned to the ballroom, to his seat among the tech elite, to conversations about market share and stock options and competitive advantage. But something had shifted, almost imperceptibly. In a world where he calculated every variable and controlled every outcome, a child's simple presence had introduced an element he couldn't quite define. Later that night, as Seattle's rain intensified into a storm that lashed against his penthouse windows, Robert stood in darkness, watching lightning flash across the sky. The encounter with the girl felt oddly significant, a moment of authenticity in his carefully constructed world. His phone buzzed with a message from Vanessa. "Morgan transition team meeting scheduled for 9 a.m. upon your return. Legal has concerns about intellectual property transfer." Always another meeting, another acquisition, another strategic move on the corporate chessboard. But for once, Robert Chandler found himself thinking about dishwashers and daughters and stories where the smallest person made the biggest difference. Little did he know that in less than 24 hours, his entire worldview would be shattered by the very child who had momentarily captured his attention. The final day of the summit dawned grey and tempestuous. Robert awoke before his 5 a.m. alarm, his mind already cycling through the day's agenda. He completed his morning routine with military precision, 30 minutes on the treadmill, 15 for shower and grooming, 10 for reviewing overnight market movements in Asia. By 6:45 a.m., he sat at the penthouse dining table, reviewing briefing documents while eating a protein-rich breakfast. Marcus entered with 2 other security team members, tablets in hand. "Morning brief, sir," Marcus said. "Weather's causing flight delays, but the helicopter is cleared for your departure. We've adjusted the schedule to accommodate the meeting with Mayor Lawson at City Hall before we leave. The route. Primary plan is unchanged. 3 vehicles, you'll be in the middle. We've run counter-surveillance, no concerns." Robert nodded, scanning the security report. "The morning news? Markets opening strong in Europe. Your CNBC interview yesterday has generated positive buzz around the quantum announcement. The Morgan acquisition is being well received by analysts. Life as usual, predictable, controlled, exactly as Robert preferred it." At precisely 7:30 a.m., he left the penthouse surrounded by his security detail. The hotel staff stood at attention as he passed through the private corridor to the service elevator, a route chosen for security rather than convenience. In the basement garage, 3 identical black SUVs waited, engines running. "Mr. Chandler," Marcus held the door to the middle vehicle. "We're 3 minutes ahead of schedule." The convoy moved through Seattle's rain-slicked streets toward City Hall. Robert used the time to make calls to the East Coast, where markets had just opened. The meeting with Mayor Lawson proceeded efficiently. 30 minutes of mutual platitudes about Seattle's tech-friendly environment and Chandler Innovation's commitment to the city, followed by a photo opportunity that would benefit them both. By 9:45 a.m., they were returning to the Summit Hotel for checkout before helicopter departure. Robert glanced at his watch. Back in San Francisco by noon, executive meeting at 1:30 p.m. Dinner with Japanese investors at 7 p.m. The machinery of his empire never stopped. The hotel's kitchen entrance bustled with activity as breakfast service ended and lunch preparation began. The security team had chosen this entrance rather than the lobby to avoid crowds of departing summit attendees. Marcus led the way, 2 team members flanking Robert, with 2 more bringing up the rear. As they approached the service elevator, Robert noticed Lily sitting on the same bench as yesterday, this time with a notebook and colored pencils scattered beside her. She looked up, recognition flashing in her eyes. "Hello again." "Mr. Computer Man," she said. Marcus tensed slightly at the unscheduled interaction, but Robert paused. "Hello again, Lily. Still waiting for your father?" She nodded. "His shift ends at 10. Then we're going to the library." One of the security team members muttered into his earpiece, holding at service elevator. "Civilian interaction." Robert found himself momentarily irritated by the clinical description of a conversation with a child. "How's your book?" "Did the small girl save the kingdom?" "Not yet." "I'm only halfway." Lily tilted her head. "You look different today. More serious." "I have important meetings. Dad says people who think meetings are the most important thing forget what's really important." From anyone else, this would have sounded like criticism. From her, it was simply observation. Robert felt an unfamiliar twinge, not quite guilt, not quite amusement, but something in between. "Your father sounds wise." "He is. He knows 3 languages and how to fix anything broken." 3 languages? English, Spanish, and German. Grandma was from Germany and taught us both. Dad says it's important to know where you come from. German, an unexpected detail that registered in Robert's mind for reasons he couldn't articulate. "Sir," Marcus said quietly, "we should continue to the vehicle." Robert nodded, turning back to Lily. "Enjoy the library." "I will. They have computers there where you can learn anything in the world for free. Maybe that's something you could put in your important meeting." This time Robert did smile. "Maybe I will." They continued to the service elevator, descending to the loading dock where deliveries arrived and trash departed. The rain had intensified, creating a curtain of water between the doorway and the waiting vehicles. 2 security team members went ahead to position themselves by the SUVs. 3-minute hold, Marcus said into his earpiece, waiting for visibility improvement. Robert stood just inside the doorway, watching the rain pummel the pavement. Somewhere behind him, kitchen staff shouted orders and the clatter of dishware created a chaotic symphony. The normalcy of it struck him, this background world that operated regardless of stock prices or corporate takeovers. As they waited, Robert noticed 2 men standing near a service corridor, speaking quietly. Something about their positioning seemed off, too rigid, too alert. They wore hotel maintenance uniforms, but carried themselves differently than the other staff. One kept touching his ear discreetly. Before Robert could mention this to Marcus, he heard a small gasp behind him. Turning, he saw Lily standing a few feet away, her eyes wide, fixed on the 2 maintenance men. "Sir, please maintain position," Marcus said, noticing his movement. The girl's expression had changed completely. Fear replaced curiosity, her face pale. She took a step toward Robert, then hesitated. "Lily?" "What's wrong?" Robert asked. She glanced around nervously, then approached, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Those men aren't hotel workers." "What do you mean?" I heard them talking in German. They didn't know I could understand. Marcus moved closer, his hand instinctively going to his concealed weapon. "Sir, what's happening?" Robert raised a hand to silence him, keeping his focus on Lily. "What did they say, Lily?" Her voice trembled. "They said the device is set, that it's in your car, the middle one. That when you're on the highway," she swallowed hard. "They said you won't make it to the airport." For a moment, time seemed to stop. Robert stared at the child, processing her words. In his world of calculated risks and known variables, this was an anomaly, information from an unexpected source delivered without agenda. "Marcus," Robert said quietly, "hold departure. Check the vehicles, all of them, now." To his credit, Marcus didn't question the order. "Full sweep, possible threat," he said into his earpiece. The team immediately shifted into a different formation, 2 members escorting Robert back into the hotel interior, while others moved toward the vehicles. "Keep the girl with us," Robert added. Inside a secure storage room, Robert watched Lily sit on a stack of linens, Her small shoulders hunched, hands clasped tightly in her lap. She looked simultaneously terrified and resolute. "You're sure about what you heard?" he asked gently. She nodded. They were speaking German. Real German, not like people learning from books. "They said, das Gerät ist im mittleren Fahrzeug platziert. Wenn auf der Autobahn ist, the device is placed in the middle vehicle. When he's on the highway," Robert translated automatically. His own German was fluent, a requirement for expanding Chandler innovations into European markets. "You speak it too?" Lily looked surprised. "Yes, business requirement." He studied her face. "Lily, this is very important. Did you recognize either of those men from yesterday? Have you seen them before?" She thought carefully. "One was here yesterday, the taller one. He was wearing a different uniform, security, I think. He walked past me several times." Robert's phone buzzed, Marcus calling. "What did you find?" Marcus's voice was tense. "Sir, we found an unidentified device attached to the undercarriage of the middle SUV. Bomb squad has been called. Hotel security is implementing lockdown protocols. We need to move you to a secondary location immediately." The confirmation hit Robert with physical force. Without Lily's warning, he would have entered that vehicle. Would have traveled the highway route to the helipad. Would have... He looked at the girl who sat watching him with solemn eyes. "You just saved my life, Lily." She bit her lip. "Are you going to catch the bad men?" "Yes," he turned back to his phone. "Marcus, those maintenance workers, find them." They were speaking German. One was posing as security yesterday. "Already on it, sir. Hotel security has locked down all exits. Police are en route." The next hour passed in controlled chaos. Robert remained in the storage room with Lily and 2 security team members, while the hotel was systematically searched. Police arrived, followed by FBI agents who took jurisdiction once the explosive device was confirmed. Jack Miller, Lily's father, was located and brought to the storage room, his face ashen with worry. "Lily!" He rushed to his daughter, kneeling before her. "Are you okay?" "They said there was some kind of security situation. I'm fine, Dad. I heard bad men talking in German like Grandma taught us. They were going to hurt Mr. Chandler. I told him, and now the police are looking for them." Jack looked from his daughter to Robert, confusion and fear evident in his expression. "Mr. Chandler, I'm so sorry if she bothered you. Your daughter saved my life, Mr. Miller." Robert extended his hand. "I owe her everything." Jack's handshake was firm despite his evident shock. He was younger than Robert had expected, perhaps mid-30s, with the weathered look of someone who had endured significant hardship. "I don't understand," he said. "What happened?" Robert explained briefly while Lily leaned against her father's side, suddenly appearing exhausted now that he was present. "My God," Jack murmured. "Lily, you understood all that? Why didn't you tell someone else, someone in hotel security?" "Because they might have been bad guys too," she said simply. Mr. Chandler seemed nice. His eyes looked sad but kind. Robert felt something unfamiliar constrict in his chest at her words. An FBI agent entered the room. "Mr. Chandler, we've apprehended one suspect attempting to exit through the loading dock. The other is still at large. We're continuing the search, but we need to move you to a secure location immediately." "What about them?" Robert gestured to Jack and Lily. "We'll need statements from both, then they'll be free to go." Robert shook his head. "No, they come with me." The suspects might realize the girl understood them. She could be in danger. The agent hesitated. "Sir, our protocols—" "I don't care about your protocols. This child saved my life. I'm responsible for her safety now." Robert's tone left no room for argument. "My security team will arrange appropriate accommodations for Mr. Miller and his daughter until this situation is resolved." Jack looked stunned. "Mr. Chandler, that's not necessary. It's non-negotiable." "Mr. Miller, at least for today, until we understand what we're dealing with." Within 30 minutes, Robert, his security team, Jack, and Lily were in a different hotel across the city, a location known only to Marcus and the FBI agents in charge of the investigation. 2 adjoining suites had been secured, one for Robert and his team, one for Jack and Lily. In the quiet aftermath, Robert sat in an armchair, watching Seattle's skyline through bulletproof glass. The rain had finally stopped, leaving the city glistening in weak sunlight. His phone had been ringing constantly. Board members, executives, his ex-wife, all demanding information about the incident, that was now breaking news across all major networks. A soft knock at the connecting door interrupted his thoughts. Marcus opened it to reveal Lily, now changed into clean clothes apparently purchased by one of the security team. "Mr. Chandler? Dad said I should thank you for the new clothes and the nice room." Robert gestured for her to enter. "You're welcome, Lily. It's the least I could do." She approached cautiously, studying the suite with wide eyes. "This room is bigger than our whole apartment. Is there anything else you need? Anything I can get for you or your father?" Lily considered the question seriously. "Dad's worried about missing work. He says we need the money for rent." The simplicity of the concern, so far removed from the corporate machinations that occupied Robert's daily thoughts, struck him forcefully. "Tell your father not to worry about that. His job will be waiting for him. And he'll be paid for this time away." Lily nodded, apparently satisfied. Then, with the directness only children can muster, "Why did those men want to hurt you?" Robert hesitated, unsure how to explain corporate espionage and market manipulation to a 7-year-old. "Some people don't like the decisions I make. Some people think I have too much power or money. Do you?" The question, innocent yet profound, left Robert momentarily speechless. "I have enough to do what needs to be done. Dad says we have enough too, even though sometimes we eat macaroni 3 nights in a row." She looked around the opulent suite. "But I think your enough is different from our enough." "I think you're right about that," Robert said softly. Lily moved to the window, pressing her small hand against the glass. "Will the bad men try again? The FBI will find them. My security team will protect us." She turned back to him, her expression serious beyond her years. "You should be careful. Bad people don't stop being bad just because they get caught once." The wisdom in her observation was unsettling. "I'm always careful, Lily." "No," she said with surprising certainty. "You're protected. It's not the same thing." Before Robert could respond, Jack appeared at the connecting door, apology written across his face. "I'm sorry. Mr. Chandler." "Lily, come on, let's let Mr. Chandler rest." "It's fine. Mr. Miller, your daughter is remarkably perceptive." Jack smiled tiredly. "Too smart for her own good sometimes. Asks questions that leave me scrambling for answers." "The best ones are about people who surprise you," Robert said, echoing Lily's words from the day before. The girl beamed, recognizing her own phrase. "See, Dad? He remembers things too." As they returned to their suite, Robert remained by the window, the day's events replaying in his mind. The carefully orchestrated attempt on his life, the random presence of a child who happened to understand German, the milliseconds of decision that stood between life and complete disaster. His phone rang again, Vanessa for the 5th time. "Yes?" "Robert, thank God. The board is in emergency session. The FBI has briefed us on the situation. Are you safe? When can you return to San Francisco?" He watched a seagull soar past the window, riding currents of air with effortless grace. "I'm staying in Seattle for now. Cancel my meetings for the rest of the week. The rest of the... Robert, the Japanese investors are expecting you tonight. The Morgan transition can't proceed without your sign-off on the restructuring. Figure it out, Vanessa. That's why I pay you 7 figures. He ended the call and turned from the window. For the first time in years, perhaps decades, Robert Chandler felt something shift within him. The machinery of his empire would continue without him for a few days. The markets would fluctuate. Deals would stall or accelerate. But in the next room sat a child who had irrevocably altered his carefully controlled existence with nothing more than honesty and courage. And for reasons he couldn't yet articulate, Robert knew that everything had changed. The next morning, Robert woke to the unfamiliar sound of children's cartoons playing softly in the adjoining suite. For a moment, disoriented by the ordinary noise, he forgot the extraordinary circumstances that had brought him here. His phone showed 43 missed calls and 97 unread emails, the digital representation of an empire demanding attention. The attempted assassination was headline news across all major networks, with speculation running rampant about potential perpetrators. Industrial espionage, market manipulation, personal vendetta. The theories multiplied hourly. Marcus knocked and entered with a tablet displaying security briefings. "Update, sir. FBI has identified the second suspect, Heinrich Weber, German national with ties to several corporate intelligence firms, previously employed by Reynolds Quantum. though they're denying any knowledge of his activities. Robert's eyes narrowed. Lawrence Reynolds' company, his chief rival in the quantum computing space. The connection seemed too convenient, yet Reynolds wasn't foolish enough to arrange such a clumsy assassination attempt. Was he? And the first suspect, Anton Bauer, former Bundeswehr Special Forces, worked private security throughout Europe before dropping off the grid 3 years ago. Neither is talking yet, Robert nodded. And the Millers? FBI finished their interviews last night. They're free to go, but... Marcus hesitated. Sir, there's a complication. Someone leaked the girl's involvement to a reporter at the Seattle Times. We've contained it for now, but once the Millers return to their apartment, they'll be swarmed by media. Robert frowned. The last thing Lily needed was to become the center of a media circus, or worse, a target for whoever had orchestrated the attack. They stay with us for now. Find someplace secure away from Seattle. Arrange for anything they need. Yes, sir. Also, the board is requesting an emergency video conference at noon Eastern Time. Tell them I'll be there. After Marcus left, Robert stood by the window, contemplating his next move. The rational business decision would be to return to San Francisco immediately, manage the crisis from headquarters, distance himself from the Millers once their safety was assured. But something, intuition perhaps, or something less definable, told him that path was wrong. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Jack Miller stood in the doorway connecting their suites, his expression a mixture of gratitude and discomfort. Mr. Chandler, I wanted to thank you for everything, but we really should be getting home. Lily has school tomorrow, and I need to sort things out with the hotel about my job. Please call me Robert. He gestured toward a chair. And I'm afraid returning home isn't safe yet. Not until we know exactly what we're dealing with. Jack remained standing, his posture revealing military training. With all due respect, sir, this isn't our fight. Lily did what any decent person would do. We don't expect anything in return. What your daughter did was extraordinary, Mr. Miller. Most adults would have hesitated, rationalized away what they heard, or simply minded their own business. She acted with courage and clarity that saved my life. Robert studied the younger man. And now I'm asking you to trust me when I say that returning to your apartment could put both of you at risk. Jack ran a hand through his short brown hair, the same color as Lily's curls. We can't just disappear. I have responsibilities. Lily has school, all of which can be addressed. I have resources that can help make this transition smooth. It would only be temporary, a few weeks at most, until the investigation clarifies who was behind this. Before Jack could respond, Lily appeared beside him, still in pajamas decorated with cartoon astronauts. Dad, are we going to stay with Mr. Chandler? Her eyes, bright with excitement, moved between the two men. Jack sighed. We're discussing it, Pumpkin. I think we should. His security people look like the men in your military photos. The serious ones who keep people safe. Robert felt a smile tug at his lips. Very observant, Lily. Most of my security team are former military, like your father. Her eyes widened. You were a soldier, Mr. Chandler. No, but I respect those who serve. He turned back to Jack. 2 weeks. A secure location of your choosing within reason. Your job will be waiting when you return, and Lily's education won't suffer. After that, if you wish to return to your normal lives, I'll ensure you have the resources to do so safely. Jack studied him, evaluating. And if I say no, then I'll arrange for alternative security measures for you both in Seattle. But I can't guarantee they'll be as effective or as unobtrusive. Jack looked down at his daughter, who was now examining the room service menu with fascination. Dad, they have chocolate chip pancakes with whipped cream faces. Something in Jack's expression softened. 2 weeks, he said finally. And then we re-evaluate. Agreed. Robert extended his hand and they shook on it. The board meeting proceeded exactly as Robert had anticipated. The directors oscillated between genuine concern for his well-being and thinly veiled anxiety about market implications and leadership continuity. The stock dropped 8 points when news broke, said Harrison Whitmore, the oldest board member. We need you back in San Francisco, Robert, visible, in control. I'll return when security considerations allow it, Robert replied calmly. In the meantime, Vanessa has full authority to execute the Morgan transition. And this family you've taken under your wing? Asked Diana Chen, arching a perfectly groomed eyebrow. "The press is starting to ask questions about the child involved. The Millers' privacy will be protected at all costs." Robert's tone hardened. "Their safety is non-negotiable." After the call ended, Robert found himself staring at the blank screen, reflecting on how quickly priorities could shift. A week ago, he would have been the first to insist on business continuity above all else. Now the thought of returning to his glass tower and proceeding as if nothing had changed seemed not just impossible, but wrong. By afternoon, arrangements had been finalized. A private compound in the mountains of Montana, originally purchased as a potential executive retreat but rarely used, would be their destination. Remote, secure, with all modern amenities and a small staff already in place. Marcus had arranged for a private flight from a small airfield outside Seattle, bypassing commercial airports entirely. "Everything's packed, sir," Marcus reported. The Millers had limited personal belongings at their apartment. "We've arranged for additional clothes and necessities to be waiting at the compound." "And Lily's school?" "We've coordinated with her principal. Official story is a family emergency. We've arranged for a tutor to continue her education during the stay." Robert nodded, impressed as always by his team's efficiency. "And the investigation?" "FBI is following multiple leads. The connection to Reynolds Quantum is circumstantial but concerning. Both suspects have foreign bank accounts that received substantial deposits 3 days before the summit. They're tracing the money now. Keep me informed of any developments." Robert paused. "And Marcus, have you found anything unusual in Jack Miller's background?" The question had been nagging at him. The coincidence of a dishwasher's daughter with knowledge of German being in exactly the right place at the right time. "Nothing suspicious, sir. Army veteran, 2 tours in Afghanistan. Honorable discharge in 2015 after an IED injury. Worked various jobs since then. Wife died of cancer 4 years ago. No criminal record. No unusual financial activities, no suspicious contacts. By all accounts, he's exactly what he appears to be. A widower struggling to raise his daughter." The simplicity of it was almost disappointing. Robert had half expected some complex conspiracy, some hidden connection that would make sense of the randomness of his survival. Instead, it appeared to be exactly what it seemed, pure chance or perhaps fate if one believed in such things. The journey to Montana took just over 2 hours in Robert's private jet. Lily spent most of the flight with her face pressed to the window, marveling at mountains and clouds with unbridled enthusiasm. Jack alternated between anxious vigilance and reluctant wonder at the luxury surrounding them. The Montana compound exceeded even Robert's recollection. Nestled in a valley with mountains rising on 3 sides, the main house was a modern interpretation of traditional lodge architecture. Soaring glass walls framing spectacular views, natural stone and timber, creating warmth despite the grand scale. A helicopter pad, small stable, and separate guest house completed the property, all within a perimeter monitored by state-of-the-art security systems. "This is your vacation house?" Jack asked as they stepped from the SUV that had transported them from the airfield. "Corporate retreat," Robert corrected. "Hardly used in recent years." Lily spun in a slow circle, taking in the mountains, the pine forests, the expanse of sky. "It looks like the pictures in my library books, the ones about national parks. Yellowstone is about 100 miles south," Robert said. "Perhaps we could visit while we're here." The suggestion surprised even him. When had he last contemplated something as ordinary as tourism? His travel was invariably tied to business, meetings, acquisitions, strategic partnerships. The idea of travel for pleasure seemed almost foreign. Mrs. Sullivan, the property manager, a capable woman in her 60s who had overseen the compound since its construction, showed them to their rooms. The Millers were given the east wing, with connecting bedrooms overlooking a small lake. Robert took the master suite in the west wing, while Marcus and 2 other security team members occupied the guest house. That evening, they gathered in the great room for dinner, a simple but excellent meal prepared by Mrs. Sullivan. Seated at the massive oak table that could accommodate 20, but now held just 4, Robert was struck by the peculiarity of the situation. When had he last shared a meal like this, without business objectives or strategic conversation? "This is really good," Lily said, attacking her roast chicken with enthusiasm. "Better than the hotel." "Better than my cooking, that's for sure," Jack added with a self-deprecating smile. Dad burns toast, Lily explained solemnly. Dad sometimes pasta. Cooking was always Sarah's domain, Jack said, a flicker of old pain crossing his face. I'm still learning. Your wife? Robert asked. Jack nodded. She died when Lily was 3, cancer. I'm sorry. She taught German at the university before she got sick. That's how we met. I was using my GI Bill to take classes after my discharge. So that's where Lily learned German. Sarah insisted on raising her bilingual. Said it was part of her heritage, Jack smiled at the memory. After Sarah died, I kept it up as best I could. Watched German, cartoons with Lily, read her German bedtime stories. It was a way to keep Sarah present. The irony wasn't lost on Robert. A language maintained as a connection to a lost mother had ultimately saved his life. And the hotel job? Jack shrugged. It paid the bills. Military training doesn't translate well to civilian employment, especially with a bum leg from an IED. The hotel had good health insurance, which we needed after Sarah's medical bills. The casual mention of financial hardship, something Robert hadn't personally experienced since his 20s, created an uncomfortable awareness of the disparity between their lives. Here was a man who had served his country, lost his wife and struggled to provide for his daughter, while Robert accumulated wealth beyond rational need. What did you do in the army, Dad? Lily asked, seemingly unaware that this might not be a typical dinner-table question. Jack hesitated. I was in Special Forces. Green Berets. Robert reassessed the man before him. Special Forces explained the alertness, the quick assessment of situations, the calm under pressure. Dad can speak 4 languages and knows how to survive in the wilderness with just a knife, Lily announced proudly. Jack looked embarrassed. 3 languages, and let's hope the survival skills stay theoretical. 4, Lily insisted. English, German, Spanish, and that one with the funny sounds. Pashto, Jack conceded. But I'm rusty. Impressive, Robert said. My language acquisition was purely pragmatic. German for European markets, Mandarin for Chinese expansion, enough Spanish and Japanese to be polite in meetings. Different kinds of necessity, Jack observed. After dinner, Lily asked if she could explore the grounds. Jack, still cautious in the unfamiliar environment, insisted on accompanying her. Stay within sight of the house, Marcus advised. The perimeter is secure, but standard protocols still apply. Left alone, Robert retreated to the study, a wood-paneled room with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a massive stone fireplace. He activated the secure satellite link to check in with Vanessa and review the day's developments. The Morgan acquisition was proceeding. Stock prices had stabilized after his brief appearance via video conference, and the FBI had made progress, tracking the financial trail behind the assassination attempt. The deposits came through a shell company in Luxembourg, Vanessa reported. They're still working to identify the actual source. And Reynolds, publicly expressing shock and concern, privately reaching out through intermediaries to assure us they had no involvement. The board is inclined to believe them. The attempt was too crude for Lawrence's style. Robert agreed. Reynolds was calculating and ruthless, but not stupid. If he wanted to eliminate competition, he'd find a way that couldn't be traced back to him. What about the press interest in the Millers? Contained for now. We've released a statement acknowledging that a hotel employee assisted in identifying a security threat, but no names or details. Most attention is focused on the German suspects and potential corporate espionage angles. After concluding the call, Robert poured himself a scotch and moved to the window. The sun was setting behind the mountains, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. In the fading light, he could see Jack and Lily walking along the lake shore, her small hand in his, their pace unhurried. The scene stirred something unexpected in Robert, not envy, exactly, but awareness of absence. His own relationship with Alexander had been constrained by divorce, boarding schools, and the demands of building an empire. They maintained a cordial connection, but lacked the easy intimacy he witnessed between Jack and Lily. His phone rang. Alexander. Dad, are you okay? I've been trying to reach you for hours. I'm fine, Alex. Security protocols limited communication. Jesus, Dad, someone tried to kill you. That's not fine. The genuine concern in his son's voice caught Robert off guard. I'm safe, in a secure location with good people around me. The news mentioned a child was involved. That she warned you somehow? Yes, a remarkable little girl who happened to be in the right place at the right time. There was a pause. That's not typically how your stories go. Usually it's all security protocols and contingency plans. This was outside the usual parameters. Robert watched as Jack lifted Lily onto his shoulders, her laughter carrying across the distance. Sometimes the most significant variables are the ones you never thought to calculate. Now you sound like one of my environmental engineering professors, Alexander said, but his tone was warm. Mom's worried too, by the way. You might want to call her. I will. After ending the call, Robert remained at the window until darkness fell completely and Jack and Lily returned to the house. Their presence here, in his carefully ordered world, was an anomaly, a disruption to established patterns. Yet watching them, he felt something shift in his perception, as if a new variable had been introduced to an equation he had believed already solved. Later, passing by Lily's room, Robert heard Jack's voice reading a bedtime story, something about a brave knight and a dragon. He paused, listening to the rise and fall of the narrative, the occasional question from Lily, Jack's patient answers. Such an ordinary moment, yet somehow profound in its simplicity. In his own room, Robert stood before the mirror, loosening his tie. The face that looked back at him was familiar, yet somehow different. The same features that appeared on magazine covers and financial news programs, but altered by recent events in ways he couldn't quite define. For the first time in years, Robert Chandler went to bed without checking market futures or reviewing strategic briefings. Instead, his thoughts circled around German lessons preserved as a memorial to a mother, a father struggling to fill two parental roles, and a child whose courage had altered the trajectory of his carefully planned existence. As sleep approached, one thought crystallized with unexpected clarity. His survival had not been ensured by the expensive security systems or professional bodyguards in which he'd placed his trust, but by the simple bravery of a 7-year-old girl who recognized wrong and chose to act. The realization was both humbling and profound, a reminder that for all his wealth and power, some things remained beyond his control or purchase. And surprisingly, for a man who had built an empire on control, that thought brought comfort rather than anxiety, as he drifted into the deepest sleep he'd experienced in years. Days at the Montana compound settled into an unexpected rhythm. Robert continued to manage his business empire remotely, spending mornings in video conferences and strategic calls. But his afternoons began to shift, first with brief walks around the property, then with longer excursions that increasingly included the Millers. 1 week into their stay, Robert found himself sitting on the dock beside the small lake, watching Jack teach Lily to fish. The domesticity of the scene struck him as surreal, a tableau he was observing from the outside, separate from his normal existence. You need to be patient, Jack was saying, adjusting Lily's grip on the fishing rod. Fish don't work on human schedules. How do they tell time underwater? Lily asked, squinting at the placid surface of the lake. They don't need clocks. They follow the sun, the seasons, their instincts. That sounds nicer than homework and bedtimes, Jack laughed. Maybe, but fish have their own problems, always watching for bigger fish, trying to eat them. Like businesses, Robert said without thinking. They both turned to look at him, surprised by his contribution to their conversation. Is that what you do? Lily asked. Look for bigger fish? Sometimes I am the bigger fish, Robert admitted. Sometimes I'm watching for them. And sometimes, Jack added with unexpected insight, you're so busy watching for big fish that you miss the current changing direction. The observation, delivered without judgment, struck uncomfortably close to truth. How many shifts in technology, in culture, in human priorities, had he dismissed as irrelevant to the bottom line? I caught something, Lily suddenly exclaimed, her rod bending dramatically. What followed was 10 minutes of excitement as Jack helped her reel in a respectable rainbow trout, Lily alternating between determination and delighted squeals. When the fish was finally landed, she insisted on releasing it after a brief celebration. We already have dinner, she explained, watching the trout disappear back into the depths. He should get to go home too. That evening, Mrs. Sullivan prepared a hearty stew, which they ate at the kitchen island rather than the formal dining room. The conversation flowed naturally, touching on Lily's progress with her tutor, Jack's physiotherapy for his injured leg, and the latest updates on the investigation. FBI thinks they've identified a third conspirator, Robert shared, keeping the details vague for Lily's benefit. Someone higher in the organization who coordinated the others. Have they made an arrest? Jack asked. Not yet. They're building a case. These things take time. Like fishing, Lily said sagely, spooning more stew into her mouth. After dinner, they gathered in the great room where a fire crackled in the massive stone hearth. Lily had discovered a collection of board games in a cabinet and insisted they play. To Robert's surprise, he found himself agreeing to Monopoly, a game he hadn't played since college. I always get the dog, Lily announced, claiming the small metal token. I'll take the top hat, Robert said, selecting the piece that had been his favorite as a child. Car for me, Jack said. Closest thing to a tank they make. The game progressed with unexpected competitiveness from all sides. Lily proved to be surprisingly strategic, focusing on orange and red properties. Jack demonstrated a careful balance of risk and conservation. Robert, accustomed to high-stakes business negotiations, found himself genuinely engaged in the miniature property empire unfolding on the board. You're supposed to pay me $200, Lily said, pointing to the chance card Robert had drawn. A steep price for school repairs, he observed, counting out the colorful bills. Education is expensive, Jack said with a wry smile. Trust me, I've been saving for Lily's college since she was born. A college fund on a dishwasher's salary can't be easy, Robert said, immediately regretting the bluntness of his observation. Jack's expression remained neutral. Sarah had a small life insurance policy. That's the foundation. I add what I can each month, even if it's just $20. What do you want to study, Lily? Robert asked, hoping to move past his tactless comment. Astronomy, or maybe veterinary medicine, or both, animals in space. Her eyes lit up at the thought. Did you know there's a dog constellation? Canis Major. I read about it in my library book. I did not know that, Robert admitted. What did you want to be when you were little, Mr. Chandler? The question caught him off guard. I always knew I would go into business. My father expected it. But what did you want? Lily persisted. Robert paused, searching his memory. An architect, I think. I used to draw buildings when I was about your age. Why didn't you become one? Life took a different direction. My father needed help with his company. Then college, then business school. Choices narrow as you get older, Lily. That sounds sad, she said simply, rolling the dice for her turn. Later, after Lily had gone to bed and Jack had retired to make some calls to friends back in Seattle, Robert stood on the deck, staring at the stars visible in the clear mountain air. His phone buzzed, Vanessa with the daily summary. European markets close strong. The Morgan integration team reports all milestones on schedule. PR has successfully redirected media attention from the assassination attempt to the quantum computing breakthrough. Robert listened, providing necessary authorizations and directions, but felt strangely detached from information that would normally command his full attention. The board is asking about your return timeline, Vanessa concluded. Harrison specifically mentioned the Nakamura partnership negotiations scheduled for next week. I'll be back when security clearance is given, Robert said, the standard response he'd been using. But for the first time, he realized he was in no hurry to return. The next morning brought unexpected news. Marcus reported that FBI investigators had linked the assassination attempt to a sophisticated financial scheme. Someone had positioned themselves to profit enormously from the market turmoil that would follow Robert's death. They've traced transactions to a hedge fund manager in Greenwich, Marcus explained, Jeremy Blackwood. His firm manages investments for several of your competitors. Blackwood, Robert repeated, searching his memory. He approached us about managing part of the Chandler Foundation endowment last year. Vanessa turned him down. His returns weren't impressive enough. Apparently, he found another way to profit from Chandler Innovations. Has he been arrested? Not yet. They're gathering evidence, building a case that will stick. Robert nodded, processing this information. The motivation was disappointing in its banality. Not industrial espionage or corporate rivalry, but simple financial opportunism. Keep me informed of any developments. Later that morning, Robert was reviewing quarterly projections when he became aware of Lily standing in the doorway of the study, watching him with curious eyes. "You look busy," she observed. "I am, but I can take a break. What's up?" "The tutor is giving me a test. Dad's doing his physical therapy exercises. I'm bored." Robert checked his watch. He had a video conference with Asian investors in 20 minutes, and preparation materials to review before then. "I'm sorry. Lily, I have an important meeting soon." Her face fell slightly, but she nodded with surprising maturity. "That's okay. Mrs. Sullivan said I could help her make cookies later." As she turned to leave, Robert found himself saying, "Wait, my meeting isn't for 20 minutes. Would you like to see something interesting?" Her face brightened immediately. "Yes, please." Robert turned his tablet toward her, displaying a 3D model of a quantum computing processor chip, the breakthrough technology that Chandler Innovations would be launching next quarter. "Do you know what a quantum computer is?" Lily shook her head, moving closer to examine the rotating model. "Classical computers, like the ones in your school, use bits that can be either 0 or 1, like light switches, either on or off. But quantum computers use quantum bits or qubits that can be both 0 and 1 at the same time." "That doesn't make sense," Lily said, her brow furrowing. "You're right. It defies our everyday logic. But in the quantum world, the world of very tiny particles, things behave differently than they do in our world." To Robert's surprise, Lily didn't dismiss the concept but leaned closer, studying the model with intense concentration. "So it's like a computer that can think about all the possibilities at once." "That's actually a very good way of putting it," Robert said, impressed by her intuitive grasp of a concept that confounded many adults. For the next 15 minutes, Robert found himself explaining quantum superposition and entanglement to a 7-year-old, simplifying complex concepts into metaphors involving Lily's favorite animals and characters from her books. Her questions were startlingly insightful, cutting to the heart of concepts that PhDs spent years studying. "You have an extraordinary mind." "Lily," Robert said finally, genuinely impressed. She shrugged, uncomfortable with the direct praise. "I just like to know how things work. That's the foundation of all scientific discovery. Dad says I ask too many questions sometimes." "Never stop asking questions. The world belongs to the curious." She beamed at him, then glanced at the clock on the wall. "Your meeting is in 5 minutes. I should go." As she left, Robert felt an unexpected warmth, the satisfaction of sharing knowledge, of witnessing understanding bloom. When was the last time he'd experienced that simple pleasure? His interactions with employees, with board members, even with his own son, had become transactional, focused on outcomes rather than the joy of connection. The investment meeting proceeded efficiently, but throughout, Robert found his thoughts returning to Lily's questions, to the way her mind made connections that many adults would miss. That afternoon, breaking from his usual routine, Robert joined Jack and Lily for a hike along a trail that circled the lake. The autumn air was crisp, the aspens fluttering with golden leaves against the deep green of pine forests. "Mr. Chandler explained quantum computers to me," Lily informed her father as they walked. "They're like computers that can think about everything at the same time." "Did he now?" Jack glanced at Robert with surprise, a bit advanced for 2nd grade. "She grasped the basic concepts better than some of my board members," Robert said. "Lily's always been quick with math and science. Her teachers want to move her up a grade, but—" Jack hesitated. "I worry about the social aspects. Being the youngest, smallest kid in class isn't easy. You want to protect her. I want her to have a childhood. Sarah and I agreed on that. Challenge her mind, but let her be a kid." Robert nodded, understanding the balance Jack was trying to maintain. His own parents had prioritized achievement above all else. Prep schools at 10, advanced placement classes, summer academic programs instead of camps or family vacations. He'd excelled, certainly, but at what cost? "Look!" Lily exclaimed suddenly, pointing to a fallen log beside the trail. A fox stood there, its russet fur bright against the autumn foliage. Watching them with alert black eyes, all three froze, observing the wild creature that observed them back with equal curiosity. "It's beautiful," Lily whispered. "Vulpes vulpes," Robert said softly. "The red fox. Adaptable, intelligent, remarkable survivors." The fox held their gaze for another moment before disappearing into the underbrush with fluid grace. How did you know that? The scientific name? Jack asked as they resumed walking. I studied zoology briefly in college before switching to business. An abandoned interest. Why did you switch? Robert considered the question. My father's health was declining. The family business needed direction. It seemed the responsible choice. Do you regret it? The question came from Lily, looking up at him with those direct eyes that seemed to see more than they should. I built something significant, Robert replied, sidestepping the actual question. Chandler Innovations employs thousands of people, develops technologies that improve lives. But do you like it? Lily persisted. The simplicity of the question struck him. When had anyone last asked not about his success or strategies or market position, but simply whether he enjoyed what he did? Parts of it, he admitted. The innovation, seeing ideas become reality, the problem-solving, he paused. Other parts are necessary rather than enjoyable. They walked in silence for a moment, the only sounds their footsteps on the forest floor and the wind in the aspens. Dad doesn't like washing dishes, Lily offered finally. But he says work is about providing, not enjoying. Your dad is a wise man, Robert said, meeting Jack's eyes over Lily's head. But perhaps neither of us has the complete answer. That evening, after Lily had gone to bed, Robert and Jack sat on the deck. The night air cold enough to see their breath, but comfortable with the warmth of the outdoor fireplace nearby. Robert had opened a bottle of exceptional bourbon, which they sipped in companionable silence. She likes you, Jack said finally. Lily doesn't warm up to many adults since Sarah died. She's an extraordinary child. Yes, she is. Jack stared into the fire. I worry sometimes that I'm not enough, that she needs more than I can give her. You're selling yourself short. She's thriving. She's surviving. There's a difference. Jack swirled the bourbon in his glass. I want more for her than just getting by. The tutor you arranged. She says Lily is performing well above grade level in every subject. She could be something special with the right opportunities. What's holding her back? Reality. A single dad with a high school education and a dishwasher's salary. Living in a one-bedroom apartment where she sleeps on a pull-out sofa. Schools that are underfunded and overcrowded. Jack's voice held no self-pity, just a clear-eyed assessment of circumstances. Robert considered this. What would change that equation? Winning the lottery. Jack gave a short laugh. I've been applying for better jobs, taking online courses when I can afford them. It's a slow climb. And if resources weren't the limiting factor, Jack looked at him sharply. We're not a charity case, Mr. Chandler. Robert, he corrected automatically. And that's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? Robert chose his words carefully. I'm in a position to create opportunities. Educational funds, mentorship programs, scholarships. Not just for Lily, but for children like her. Because she saved your life. Jack's tone was neutral, but with an edge of wariness. Initially, yes. I won't deny that I feel a personal debt there. But having spent time with her, with you both... Robert paused, seeking honesty rather than strategic phrasing for perhaps the first time in years. I'm beginning to see things I've missed, perspectives I've lost, values I've deprioritized. Jack studied him, his military training evident in the careful assessment. And what would these opportunities look like? That depends. What does Lily need most? The conversation extended late into the night, moving from Lily's immediate educational needs to broader questions of purpose and impact. Robert found himself speaking with unexpected candor about his own journey, the abandoned interests, the relationships sacrificed to ambition, the growing disconnect between his accumulation of wealth and his experience of meaning. Jack, for his part, shared the challenges of raising a gifted child alone, of balancing immediate needs against long-term potential, of preserving Sarah's memory and influence while building a new life. When they finally parted, something had shifted between them, a mutual respect that transcended their vastly different circumstances. In his room, Robert stood at the window, watching moonlight silver the mountains. His phone displayed dozens of notifications, emails, and messages, the constant demands of an empire that had once defined him completely. But for the first time in decades, he felt the stirring of something different. Not a rejection of his business acumen or achievements, but a recontextualization, a reordering of priorities. On impulse, He opened his calendar app and cleared the following afternoon, cancelling a quarterly review meeting that would have occupied 3 hours. Then he sent a message to Jack. "Tell Lily to bring her astronomy book tomorrow. I know a good spot for stargazing." As he set the phone aside, Robert realized he was smiling, a genuine expression that had nothing to do with stock prices, successful negotiations, or competitive advantage. Something was changing within him, a subtle but fundamental shift like the imperceptible movement of tectonic plates that eventually transforms entire landscapes. Whether this transformation would complement his existing life or dismantle it entirely remained to be seen. But for tonight, in the quiet of the Montana mountains, that uncertainty felt not like a threat, but like possibility, the first he had truly allowed himself to experience in longer than he could remember. 2 weeks stretched into 3, then 4. The initial security crisis evolved into something else entirely, an unexpected interlude that none of them had anticipated. The autumn days grew shorter, the mountain air sharper with the promise of approaching winter. Robert postponed his return to San Francisco repeatedly, citing security concerns, but privately acknowledging different motivations. In the great room one evening, he conducted a video call with Vanessa, who no longer bothered to hide her exasperation. "The board is getting restless, Robert. This remote arrangement was acceptable during the immediate aftermath, but it's been a month. Harrison is using words like leadership vacuum and abdication of responsibility." Robert watched snow begin to fall outside the windows, the first of the season, delicate flakes dancing in the porch lights. The Morgan transition is proceeding on schedule. Quarterly earnings exceeded projections. The quantum computing patents have been secured. What exactly is suffering in my absence? It's not about metrics. It's about presence, visibility, the Chandler mystique that you've cultivated for 20 years. He considered this, recognizing the truth in her assessment. His leadership style had always involved a certain theatrical element, the brilliant, demanding visionary whose physical presence inspired both fear and devotion. "I'll return next week," he said finally. "Schedule a board meeting and press conference. And Vanessa? I'll be bringing some new initiatives to the table. Have the Foundation's executive director available for consultation." "New initiatives? What kind of initiatives?" "Educational, focused on identifying and supporting exceptional children from disadvantaged backgrounds." Her silence spoke volumes before she finally responded. "This is about the girl, isn't it? The dishwasher's daughter. This is about potential, Vanessa. Human potential that's being wasted because of arbitrary barriers to opportunity." After ending the call, Robert remained at the window, watching the snowfall intensify. The idea had been forming for weeks, initially as a way to repay his personal debt to Lily, but expanding into something more comprehensive. A systematic approach to identifying children with exceptional abilities, regardless of socioeconomic background, providing them with educational resources, mentorship, and financial support through college and beyond. The concept wasn't entirely altruistic. These children would become a talent pipeline for Chandler Innovations, bringing fresh perspectives and diverse experiences to a corporate culture that had grown increasingly homogeneous. But the primary motivation remained the recognition that minds like Lily's were rare and precious resources that society couldn't afford to squander. "Dad, it's snowing." Lily's excited voice echoed through the house as she ran from window to window. Jack followed at a more measured pace, smiling at his daughter's enthusiasm. "First snow of the season," he said, joining Robert at the window. "Came early this year." "We rarely notice the change of seasons in San Francisco," Robert observed. "It's either mildly cool and foggy or mildly warm and foggy. One of the things I miss about military life, being connected to the elements. You feel the seasons when you're living in them, not just observing them through climate-controlled windows." "I've been thinking about your situation," Robert said, shifting the conversation. "When we return to Seattle," Jack's expression grew cautious. "We've talked about this, Robert. We're not looking for—" "Not charity," Robert interrupted. "Opportunity. For both of you." Lily had joined them, pressing her nose against the glass to watch the snow accumulate on the ground outside. "I'm establishing a new educational initiative through the Chandler Foundation, a program to identify exceptionally gifted children and provide them with the resources they need to fulfill their potential." Robert turned to face Jack directly. I'd like Lily to be part of the pilot program. And what would that entail exactly? Jack's tone remained neutral, but his posture had tensed slightly. Placement in a school equipped to challenge her. Supplementary educational experiences. Museums, laboratories, cultural opportunities. A trust fund for college and graduate studies if she chooses that path. Robert paused. And a position for you if you're interested. What kind of position? Program coordinator for veteran outreach. Many of these children come from families facing economic challenges. Veterans bring unique perspectives and skills. Your experience would be valuable. Jack studied him, clearly trying to determine whether this was an elaborate form of charity disguised as employment. This is a real position, with responsibilities and expectations? Very real. The program needs someone with your background, military discipline, experience overcoming obstacles, commitment to education as a pathway forward. And the fact that I'm Lily's father? Is a connection that helps me trust you with a significant responsibility. But the position exists because it fills a genuine need. Jack was silent for a long moment, his internal debate visible in his expression. Can I see a formal job description? Understand exactly what this entails? Of course. I'll have it drawn up tomorrow. Dad, Lily interrupted, still fixated on the snow. Can we go outside, please? Jack glanced at his watch. It's almost bedtime, Pumpkin. Just for a little while? I want to catch snowflakes. The naked hope in her voice was impossible to resist. 10 minutes, Jack conceded. Get your coat. Lily raced off, returning moments later, bundled in a new winter jacket, one of many items that had mysteriously appeared in her size since their arrival. You're welcome to join us, Jack said to Robert. Robert hesitated, glancing at his tablet where several urgent emails awaited response. I should really finish these reports. The snow won't wait for reports, Lily said with 7-year-old logic that somehow seemed irrefutable. Minutes later, Robert found himself standing in the gently falling snow, watching Lily spin with her face turned skyward, tongue extended to catch the delicate flakes. The night was quiet except for the soft hiss of snow and Lily's occasional delighted giggles. I haven't done this since I was a child, Robert admitted, his breath forming clouds in the cold air. When was the last time you played in snow? Lily asked, still twirling. Robert thought back. A ski trip with my son when he was about 12. But that was organized recreation, not this. Just enjoying it, Jack supplied. No purpose beyond the experience itself. Yes? Dad says not everything needs a purpose, Lily informed him, stopping her spinning to look at him seriously. Some things are just for living. The simple wisdom in her statement struck Robert forcefully. When had he forgotten that principle? When had every action, every moment become calibrated for productivity or strategic advantage? Later that night, after Lily had gone to bed with dreams of snow angels planned for morning, Robert and Jack sat by the fire, discussing the details of Robert's proposed program. It can't single out Lily, Jack insisted. If she qualifies based on objective criteria, fine. But no special treatment. Agreed. The selection process will be transparent and merit-based. And no publicity. She's a child, not a marketing opportunity. Robert nodded. The program itself will have a public component. Corporations love attaching their names to educational initiatives. But the children involved will remain anonymous, except to those directly working with them. What about the other families? Not all parents can relocate or change jobs to accommodate a program like this. Each situation will be evaluated individually. The goal is removing barriers, whatever form they take. Jack studied him. You're serious about this. It's not just gratitude for what Lily did. It started there, Robert admitted, but it's evolved. Being here, seeing her potential, understanding what's at stake. It's clarified something I've lost sight of in recent years, which is that wealth and power are means, not ends. They're tools that can build or destroy, connect or divide. Robert stared into the fire. I've been efficient but not always effective, at least not in the ways that truly matter. Careful, Jack said with a hint of a smile. You're starting to sound like a man having a midlife crisis. More like a midlife clarity, Robert replied. I'm not abandoning what I've built. I'm expanding its purpose. The next morning brought a call from Marcus with significant news. Jeremy Blackwood, the hedge fund manager, linked to the assassination attempt, had been arrested along with 2 associates. The financial trail had been conclusively established, connecting him to both German operatives. FBI believes Blackwood was trying to manipulate Chandler's stock. He had positioned his fund to profit enormously from a price crash following your death, Marcus reported. And his motive? Primarily financial, but with a personal element. Apparently, your rejection of his bid to manage the Chandler Foundation funds was more significant to him than anyone realized. He'd leveraged his fund heavily on the expectation of securing that contract. Wounded pride and greed, Robert said. The oldest motives in the book. With Blackwood in custody, security assessment is that the immediate threat has passed. You could return to San Francisco whenever you're ready. The news should have brought relief, closure to the crisis that had brought them to Montana. Instead, Robert felt strangely conflicted. Thank you, Marcus. Inform San Francisco that we'll return next week. After the call, Robert shared the news with Jack, who received it with mixed emotions. That's good, right? The threat is contained. Life can go back to normal. Yes, Robert agreed, though neither of them sounded entirely convinced. Lily will miss this place, Jack said, looking out at the snow-covered landscape. She's never had space like this to explore. Seattle will seem confined after a month of mountains. Our apartment will seem even smaller. The unspoken reality hung between them, the inevitable return to separate worlds. Jack and Lily to their 1-bedroom apartment, Robert to his penthouse and corporate empire. The ease they had developed over the past month would be difficult to maintain across the social and economic chasm that normally divided them. It doesn't have to end completely, Robert said finally. The educational program is real. The position I offered is real. If you want it, Jack nodded slowly. I've been thinking about it. If the job description matches what you've outlined, I'd like to be part of building something that could help families like ours. Good. We'll finalize the details before returning. The conversation was interrupted by Lily bursting into the room, bundled in her snow gear. Dad, Robert! I built a snow fort, and there's a fox watching me from the trees. Come see. The formality that had crept back into their discussion dissolved at her excitement. Both men allowed themselves to be led outside, where Lily proudly displayed a surprisingly well-constructed snow fort built against a pine tree. Very impressive engineering, Robert observed, examining the packed snow walls. I used branches for structure, like in that picture you showed me of the quantum computer frame, Lily explained. For stability. You're applying quantum computing principles to snow architecture, Jack asked, raising an eyebrow. The physics are the same, Dad, she said with such seriousness that both men had to suppress laughter. Where's this fox you mentioned? Robert asked. Lily pointed toward a copse of trees at the edge of the clearing. He was right there watching me. He had red fur and the smartest eyes. Foxes are naturally curious, Robert said, but cautious around humans. Like you, Lily said matter-of-factly. Like me? You watch people like you're figuring them out, but you don't get too close usually. Except now you do sometimes. The observation, delivered with childish directness, caught Robert off guard. Had he been so transparent, or was Lily simply exceptionally perceptive? I think you're good for him, Pumpkin, Jack said with a small smile. You don't let him hide behind his CEO persona. What's a persona? The face we show to the world, Robert explained. Sometimes different from who we really are. Lily considered this, her expression serious. That sounds complicated. Why not just be who you are all the time? An excellent question, Robert admitted. One I've been asking myself lately. The days leading up to their departure took on a bittersweet quality. Lily insisted on visiting all her favorite spots around the property. The lake, the small cave she'd discovered on a hillside, the meadow where they'd spotted deer. Robert found himself accompanying them on these farewell tours, viewing the landscape through Lily's eyes, not as property or assets, but as a living environment filled with wonder. Meanwhile, the framework for the educational initiative took shape. Robert conducted video conferences with the Chandler Foundation's executive director, educational consultants, and legal advisors. The program would identify 50 children initially, across 5 cities including Seattle, providing comprehensive support through high school and college. Jack's role was defined and formalized, a position that utilized his military background, People skills and personal experience navigating systems not designed for families like his. The salary was generous but not extravagant. The responsibilities substantial enough to be clearly distinguished from charity. On their final evening in Montana, a package arrived by courier, formal employment contracts for Jack, along with documents establishing the Chandler Educational Initiative and preliminary materials for Lily's assessment and placement. "Everything appears to be in order," Jack said after reviewing the contracts carefully, "though I still have concerns about how this affects Lily. Moving schools mid-year, adjusting to a new environment. The program includes transition support, counselors experienced in helping gifted children adapt to new educational settings," Robert assured him. "And implementation can be gradual. Nothing happens overnight." Jack nodded, then signed the contracts with the deliberate care he brought to all decisions involving Lily's welfare. "To new beginnings," Robert said, offering his hand. "And to whatever comes next," Jack replied, accepting the handshake. Later, as Robert packed his belongings for the return to San Francisco, he paused at the window. The night was clear, stars brilliant against the black sky, the snow-covered landscape ghostly in the moonlight. The month in Montana had changed him in ways he was still discovering. Subtle shifts in perspective, priorities, purpose. His phone rang. "Alexander. Dad, just checking on your return plans. I'll be in San Francisco next weekend. Thought we might have dinner?" "I'd like that," Robert said, surprised by the initiative. Their relationship had evolved into occasional formal meals, scheduled weeks in advance, both of them performing the roles of father and son, without the underlying connection those terms implied. "Good. And Dad? I've been following the news about this educational initiative you're launching. It sounds different from your usual projects." "It is. In a good way, I think." Mom said the same thing. The comment warmed something in Robert that had been cold for too long. "I'm looking forward to telling you more about it. There's someone I'd like you to meet, actually. A remarkable little girl and her father who've shifted my perspective recently." "Now I'm intrigued," Alexander said, genuine curiosity in his voice. "This sounds like a story worth hearing." "It is. One I'm still figuring out how to tell." After they hung up, Robert continued packing with a strange sense of standing at a threshold. Behind him lay the familiar path, the corporate titan focused on market dominance and wealth accumulation. Before him stretched something less defined but potentially more meaningful, a life where success was measured in more than stock prices and acquisitions. The transition wouldn't be simple. The board would resist changes in priority. Shareholders would question initiatives that didn't immediately serve the bottom line. His carefully cultivated image as the ruthlessly efficient CEO would require recalibration. Yet for the first time in decades, Robert felt genuinely energized by the challenges ahead. The complexity of integrating his evolving priorities with his existing responsibilities would demand creativity, strategic thinking, and the courage to chart an unexpected course. As he closed his suitcase, Robert realized he was smiling again, an expression that was becoming less foreign to his features. Tomorrow they would return to Seattle, and he would continue to San Francisco. The interlude in Montana would end, but its impact would continue to unfold in ways none of them could yet fully comprehend. In the quiet night, with snow falling again outside his window, Robert Chandler made a silent commitment to honor the courage of a child who had saved not just his life, but perhaps his humanity, by building something worthy of that gift. Not merely a program or initiative, but a fundamental recalibration of purpose that might, in time, become his most significant legacy. The return to San Francisco brought Robert back to the gleaming glass tower that bore his name. But the man who stepped from the private elevator into the executive suite was subtly different from the one who had departed months earlier. The changes weren't immediately visible. He still wore impeccably tailored suits, still commanded rooms with his presence, still made decisions with characteristic precision. But those who knew him best noticed the shifts. "You seem different," Vanessa observed during their first in-person meeting, studying him with the careful assessment that had made her an invaluable chief of staff. "More present somehow." "Near-death experiences tend to provide perspective," Robert replied, scanning the quarterly reports she'd prepared. "It's more than that." She hesitated, then added, The board is concerned about this educational initiative. The timing, the scale, the lack of clear ROI. The board is welcome to review the proposal in full before our meeting tomorrow. The business case is sound. This isn't just about business, is it? It's about the girl. Robert set down the report. Lily Miller is the catalyst, yes. She revealed a blind spot in my thinking and potentially in our corporate strategy. We've been mining the same talent pools, the same universities, the same backgrounds. What innovation are we missing by ignoring minds like hers? Vanessa didn't look convinced. Noble sentiments, but Harrison and the financial committee will want numbers, not philosophy. They'll get both. The board meeting the following day proceeded much as Robert had anticipated. His presentation on the Chandler Educational Initiative was met with polite skepticism from most directors and open hostility from a few. $50 million over 5 years, Harrison Whitmore said, tapping the proposal. For an unproven program with no clear path to shareholder value. The talent pipeline alone justifies the investment, Robert countered. We spend more than that recruiting from elite universities, often with lower success rates. Those recruits come pre-vetted, with credentials and connections, said Patricia Alvarez, head of the financial committee. These would be unknown quantities from challenging backgrounds, with exceptional minds and diverse perspectives that could drive innovation in ways we haven't considered. This feels personal, Harrison said, studying Robert over his reading glasses. This isn't just about corporate social responsibility or talent development. This is about your experience with the Miller child. Robert met his gaze steadily. I won't deny that my interaction with Lily Miller influenced my thinking, but good leaders allow new data to inform their strategies. Her extraordinary potential currently constrained by circumstances entirely outside her. Control represents an untapped resource, not just for Chandler Innovations, but for society at large. Very inspiring, Harrison said dryly, but we answer to shareholders, not society. Who says the two must be at odds? Robert pulled up a new slide showing projected ROI models. Even with conservative estimates for talent conversion rates, the program pays for itself within 8 years. Add the PR value, tax advantages, and community goodwill, and the timeline shrinks to 5 years. The discussion continued for another hour, with directors raising concerns about implementation, oversight, and potential liability issues. Robert addressed each systematically, drawing on his preparation and his genuine conviction that the initiative represented not just the right thing to do, but a strategic advantage in an increasingly competitive market for technological talent. In the end, the board approved the initiative with 2 conditions: a 3-year review with clear performance metrics, and a commitment that Robert's personal involvement wouldn't detract from his core responsibilities as CEO. Congratulations, Vanessa said as they left the boardroom. Though I suspect Harrison will be watching this program with microscopic attention, looking for any sign of failure. Harrison has been looking for reasons to ease me toward retirement for years, Robert replied. This just gives him a new angle. Are you concerned? Robert considered the question. I've built this company from a mid-sized tech firm to a global powerhouse, increased market cap by 3,000%, delivered record returns for 15 consecutive quarters. If the board wants to question my judgment over an educational initiative that costs less than our annual holiday party budget, they're welcome to try. Back in his office, Robert reviewed the implementation timeline for the initiative. The first phase would focus on Seattle, identifying 10 children through a carefully designed assessment process that evaluated potential rather than current achievement. Lily would participate in the standard assessment, but Jack had been firm that she receive no special consideration. His phone rang, Jack calling from Seattle, where they had settled back into their apartment while awaiting the program's launch. How did the board meeting go? Jack asked. Approved with conditions. Standard corporate caution. And the position? Still secure? Absolutely. HR will contact you tomorrow to begin the onboarding process. How's Lily adjusting to being back? There was a slight pause. It's been challenging. The apartment feels smaller somehow. Her school seems less engaging after working with the tutor. She misses the mountains, the space, and you. I'm fine, Jack said automatically, then amended, adjusting. It's strange how quickly Montana began to feel normal. The program infrastructure is coming together. We should be ready to begin assessments within 3 weeks. Has Lily's school been notified of her potential transfer? Yes. Her teacher was surprisingly supportive, said she's been struggling to provide appropriate challenges for Lily within the standard curriculum. After they hung up, Robert stood at his office window, looking out at San Francisco spread below. The city's iconic fog was rolling in, shrouding the Golden Gate Bridge, transforming the familiar landscape into something mysterious and otherworldly. His office door opened, and Alexander entered, tall, lean, with Robert's blue eyes but softer features inherited from his mother. "Didn't expect to see you until our dinner this weekend," Robert said, genuinely pleased by the surprise visit. "I was in the building for a meeting with your sustainability team," Alexander explained. He worked for an environmental engineering firm that consulted with major corporations on reducing their carbon footprint, a career choice that had initially disappointed Robert, but which he had come to respect. "The carbon capture initiative? Yes, your team is surprisingly open to implementing our recommendations, given the upfront costs. Times change, priorities evolve." Robert gestured to a chair. "How are you, really?" Alexander sat, studying his father with curious eyes. "I'm good, busy. The firm is growing, which means more responsibility, more travel." He paused. "But I suspect I'm not the one who's changed recently." "Meaning?" "Meaning the Robert Chandler who left for Seattle 4 months ago wouldn't have prioritized a program for underprivileged, gifted children, or approved sustainability initiatives with 10-year ROI timelines." Alexander leaned forward. "What happened up there, Dad?" Besides the obvious assassination attempt, Robert considered how to explain the subtle yet profound shift in his worldview. "I met a child who saw things clearly, who acted without calculation or agenda when it mattered most, and it made me question how much clarity I've sacrificed to complexity over the years." "Tell me about her. Mom said you mentioned a girl and her father." For the next hour, Robert did something he rarely did, shared a personal experience without editing it for strategic presentation. He told Alexander about Lily's warning, her remarkable mind, her perspective that cut through pretense and convention. About Jack's dedication as a father, his integrity, his struggle to provide opportunities for his daughter despite limited resources. "I'd like to meet them," Alexander said when Robert finished. "They sound like they've had quite an impact on you. They'll be relocating to San Francisco once the program launches. Jack has accepted a position with the initiative." "You hired her father?" Alexander raised an eyebrow. "It's not what you're thinking. He's uniquely qualified, military background, personal experience navigating educational systems with a gifted child, perspective on the challenges these families face." "I believe you," Alexander said, and surprisingly he seemed to mean it. "It's just not your usual approach to personnel decisions." "Perhaps my usual approach has been too narrow." Their conversation continued, touching on Alexander's work, his relationship with a marine biologist he'd been dating for several months, plans for the upcoming holidays. Robert found himself genuinely engaged, asking questions not out of obligation but interest, listening to the answers with full attention rather than divided focus. When Alexander finally left, promising to bring his girlfriend to their weekend dinner, Robert felt a warmth that had nothing to do with business success or strategic advantage, simply the pleasure of connecting with his son as a person, not just an extension of legacy. The feeling was short-lived. Minutes after Alexander's departure, Vanessa entered with a concerned expression. "Lawrence Reynolds is requesting a meeting. Says it's urgent and personal." Robert frowned. Reynolds was his chief competitor in the quantum computing space, their rivalry legendary in tech circles. They maintained cordial public relations, but rarely sought direct interaction outside industry events. "Did he say what it's about?" "Only that it concerns recent events, and he prefers to discuss it privately." "Schedule it for tomorrow morning, my office, not neutral ground, and have security perform an enhanced screening." The next morning, Lawrence Reynolds arrived precisely on time, passing through security with the practiced ease of someone accustomed to corporate protocols. In his mid-60s, with silver hair and aristocratic features, Reynolds projected an old-money confidence that contrasted with Robert's self-made intensity. "Robert," he said, extending his hand. "Thank you for seeing me on short notice. Lawrence, you said it was urgent." Robert gestured to the sitting area rather than the more formal conference table. Reynolds settled into a chair, declining offers of coffee or water. "I'll come straight to the point. The German operatives involved in the attempt on your life were previously employed by a security firm that has done contract work for Reynolds Quantum. This connection is tenuous but exists. I'm aware of the connection. The FBI briefed me. Then you're also aware that the investigation has found no evidence linking my company to the assassination attempt. The investigation is ongoing." Reynolds leaned forward. "Robert, we've been competitors for 20 years. We've fought for contracts, talents, market share. I've called you many things, some of them uncomplimentary, but I have never and would never sanction violence against you or anyone else." Robert studied the older man, evaluating the sincerity in his expression. "Why tell me this in person? Your lawyers have already made formal statements to investigators. Because this goes beyond legal liability. This is about reputation, mine and my company's, and about something more fundamental." Reynolds met his gaze directly. "I didn't try to have you killed, Robert. That's not how I do business. That's not who I am." The directness of the statement, delivered without the typical corporate hedging or lawyer-approved phrasing, carried weight. Robert had known Reynolds for decades, respected him as a formidable opponent, even while working to outmaneuver him at every turn. "I believe you," Robert said finally, "though I'm curious why my survival matters enough to warrant this personal visit." A hint of the old competitive spark flashed in Reynolds' eyes. "Don't mistake this for sentiment. The quantum computing breakthrough you announced at the summit, it's significant. Revolutionary, potentially. I'd rather compete with you fairly for its applications than face accusations of criminal conspiracy. Practical as always, Lawrence. We built this industry together, Robert. Rivals, yes, but with a certain understanding, certain boundaries." Reynolds stood. "Besides, I've heard rumors about this educational initiative you're launching. Seems I might need to develop my own talent pipeline if I want to keep pace." After Reynolds departed, Robert remained in his office contemplating the conversation. The tech world was ruthless, competitive to the point of cruelty sometimes, but it operated according to its own unwritten code. Reynolds' visit had been as much about reaffirming that code as clearing his name. The rest of the week brought a flurry of activity as the Chandler Educational Initiative moved from concept to implementation. Offices were secured in Seattle and San Francisco. Educational consultants and psychologists hired to develop assessment protocols. Partnerships established with universities and research institutions. Through it all, Robert maintained daily contact with Jack and Lily, whose relocation to San Francisco was scheduled for the following month. Lily had completed preliminary assessments with extraordinary results, qualifying her for the program by objective standards that Jack found reassuring. "The schools they're suggesting," Jack said during one call, audible wonder in his voice. "These are places I couldn't even dream of affording. The program covers everything: tuition, materials, enrichment activities. There are no financial barriers to participation. It still feels impossible, like I'm waiting for the catch. The only catch is that Lily will be expected to work hard, to develop her gifts to their fullest potential." "That's never been an issue," Jack said with a hint of pride. "If anything, I've had to remind her to take breaks, to just be a kid sometimes." In the background, Robert could hear Lily asking questions about their new home in San Francisco, her excitement palpable even through the phone. "She can't wait," Jack said. "Keeps talking about showing you her new robot design. Apparently it's going to revolutionize quantum computing, or deep-sea exploration, or possibly both." I can't quite keep up with the technical details. Robert found himself smiling. "Tell her I'm looking forward to reviewing the schematics." As he ended the call, Robert became aware of Vanessa standing in his doorway, an unusual hesitation in her posture. "What is it?" "Harrison has called an executive committee meeting for tomorrow morning. Members only, no staff. Topic, unspecified. But I've heard rumors, Robert. Concerns about your focus, your priorities since returning from Montana. Meaning? Meaning there's talk about succession planning, about whether it might be time to consider transitioning to a chairman role while bringing in new leadership for day-to-day operations." The information should have angered him, would have just months ago. Instead, Robert felt a strange calm as he considered the implications. "Thank you for the warning. I'll be prepared." After Vanessa left, Robert turned to his computer, pulling up the company's leadership structure, succession plans, financial projections. If Harrison and his allies were planning a power play, they would come armed with data, showing some perceived degradation in performance, some metric that could justify suggesting a transition. But the numbers told a different story. Since Robert's return, stock performance had strengthened. The Morgan acquisition was exceeding integration targets, and the quantum computing patents had positioned Chandler Innovations at the forefront of the industry's next evolutionary leap. There was no rational business case for a leadership change, which meant the move was personal, political, an attempt to capitalize on perceived vulnerability following the assassination attempt and Robert's subsequent shift in priorities. That night, in his penthouse overlooking the bay, Robert reviewed his options. He could counterattack, using his substantial voting bloc and long-standing board relationships to shut down Harrison's initiative before it gained traction. He could negotiate, offering concessions on other matters to maintain his position. Or he could consider whether Harrison's concerns, though politically motivated, might contain a kernel of truth worth examining. Had his priorities shifted enough that the company might indeed be better served by new leadership? Was his growing investment in the educational initiative distracting him from the core responsibilities of running a global technology corporation? The Robert Chandler of 6 months ago would have dismissed these questions as irrelevant, viewing any challenge to his leadership as a threat to be neutralized. But the events in Seattle, the month in Montana, the relationships with Jack and Lily, all had created space for reflection that hadn't existed before. As dawn broke over San Francisco, Robert made his decision. He would attend Harrison's meeting not as the defensive CEO protecting his position, but as the founder and largest shareholder evaluating what leadership structure would best serve the company's future. It was a subtle but crucial distinction, one that positioned him as the architect of whatever change might come, not its victim. The executive committee meeting began exactly as Robert had anticipated, with Harrison presenting concerns about focus and strategic continuity following the traumatic events in Seattle. "No one questions your contributions to this company, Robert," Harrison said, his tone carefully calibrated to suggest respect while advancing his agenda. "But perhaps this is an opportune moment to consider a leadership transition that would allow you to focus on broader vision while day-to-day operations are managed by someone without the distractions you've recently faced." Around the table, the other committee members watched carefully, most maintaining neutral expressions as they gauged which way the power would shift. "An interesting perspective," Robert said when Harrison finished. "Though I'm curious about the timing, given that quarterly results have exceeded projections since my return, and the quantum computing patents secured during the summit have been valued at over $12 billion by independent analysts." Harrison shifted slightly. "This isn't about current performance. It's about future focus and stability." "I see." Robert leaned back in his chair, surveying the faces around him. These were individuals he had worked with for years, in some cases decades. They had built something remarkable together, weathered crises, celebrated triumphs. "Then let me address the real concerns directly. Yes, my perspectives have evolved following recent events. Yes, I'm investing significant personal energy in the educational initiative. And yes, I'm reconsidering certain aspects of how this company defines success and impact." He stood, moving to the window where San Francisco stretched beneath them. "But these aren't distractions from our core mission. They're expansions of it. The Chandler Educational Initiative isn't just philanthropy. It's strategic talent development with a 20-year horizon. The sustainability measures aren't just PR. They're essential adaptations to changing market and regulatory environments." Turning back to the table, Robert continued, "That said, Harrison raises valid questions about leadership structure. As founder and largest shareholder, I have a responsibility to ensure this company has the right leadership at every stage of its evolution. If the committee believes we should explore governance changes, I'm open to that conversation, provided it's focused on strengthening the company, not political maneuvering. The directness of his response created momentary silence around the table. Harrison, clearly prepared for defense or hostility, seemed unsure how to respond to Robert's measured consideration of the very idea he had raised as a threat. Perhaps, Robert continued into the silence, we should commission an independent governance review, evaluate our structure against industry best practices, consider whether our current leadership model optimally serves our strategic objectives for the next decade. Diana Chen, who had remained silent until now, nodded slowly. A systematic approach makes sense. Any changes should be based on analysis, not reaction to recent events. Agreed, said Michael Okafor, the committee's newest member. Though I would note that Robert's leadership during the assassination crisis and subsequent return has demonstrated remarkable stability. The market response has been consistently positive. The conversation shifted, moving from Harrison's implied challenge to a more productive discussion of governance models and succession planning, legitimate topics for any mature corporation, but now framed as strategic planning rather than a power play. By the meeting's end, a plan had been established for a comprehensive governance review, with results to be presented to the full board in 3 months. Harrison had neither won nor lost, but found his challenge transformed into a process he couldn't easily control or manipulate. As the committee members filed out, Harrison lingered behind. Neatly done, Robert. I expected defensiveness, not strategic redirection. We've known each other too long for games, Harrison. If you have concerns about my leadership, raise them directly. The older man studied him. It's not your competence I question. It's your focus. This obsession with the Miller girl and her father, it's changing you. Perhaps for the better. Perhaps, or perhaps you're allowing sentiment to cloud the ruthless clarity that built this company. There's a difference between ruthlessness and clarity, Harrison. I'm beginning to see that more distinctly. Harrison shook his head. Just be careful. The board will support vision, even evolution, but not distraction or division of purpose. After he left, Robert remained at the conference table, reviewing the exchange. Harrison's warning contained truth worth considering. Balance would be essential, integrating his evolving priorities with the responsibilities he still held to shareholders, employees, and the company's mission. His phone chimed with a text message from Jack. Lily's school placement confirmed. Starting next month at the Westlake Academy for gifted students. She's over the moon, literally building a model of the lunar surface to celebrate. The message brought a smile to Robert's face, a moment of simple joy amid corporate politics and strategic calculations. Whatever challenges lay ahead in balancing his evolving priorities, this much was clear. The path forward would be neither simple nor straightforward, but it promised to be more meaningful than the one he had been traveling before a child's warning changed everything. The Westlake Academy occupied a renovated historic building in San Francisco's Pacific Heights neighborhood, its red brick facade and ivy-covered walls contrasting with the ultra-modern learning spaces inside. On Lily's first day, Robert accompanied Jack to the campus, watching as Lily, dressed in a new Navy uniform, with her curls tamed into neat braids, vibrated with barely contained excitement. Remember what we talked about, Jack said, kneeling to straighten her collar. This is a great opportunity, but stay humble and work hard, Lily finished. And remember where I come from. That's my girl, he hugged her tightly. I'm so proud of you, Pumpkin. Dr. Eleanor Jensen, the Academy's director, greeted them in the main hall. A warm, authoritative woman in her 50s who had helped design the assessment protocols for the Chandler Initiative. Lily, we're so pleased to welcome you, she said, extending her hand with the same respect she might offer an adult. Your assessment results were truly remarkable. Thank you, Lily replied with careful politeness, though her eyes darted everywhere, absorbing the new environment with characteristic intensity. Will I get to use the robotics lab today? I read about it in the brochure. Dr. Jensen smiled. We'll start with orientation, but yes, you'll have robotics this week. Your schedule has been designed to challenge you in your areas of strength while providing support in areas where you might need it. I'm not very good at art, Lily confided. My trees look like broccoli. Then we'll work on that. Excellence isn't about being perfect at everything, Lily. It's about continuous growth. As Dr. Jensen led Lily toward her classroom, The girl turned back briefly, waving at Jack and Robert. The mixture of excitement and apprehension on her face struck Robert forcefully, the universal expression of a child stepping into something new, both eager and uncertain. "She'll be fine," Robert said as they watched her disappear down the hallway. "I know," Jack replied, though concern lingered in his voice. "It's just a big change. From a public school where she was hiding her abilities to avoid standing out, to a place where she's expected to shine. Children are remarkably adaptable, more so than adults usually." Jack glanced at his watch. "I should get to the office. First day for both of us." The Chandler Initiative's headquarters occupied a renovated warehouse in Soma, its industrial bones preserved but transformed into an airy, collaborative workspace. Jack's office, modest but with a view of the Bay Bridge, reflected his new role coordinating veteran outreach and family support services. "Nervous?" Robert asked as they rode the elevator. "Terrified," Jack admitted with a half-smile. "It's been years since I wore anything resembling business attire." Sarah used, "To tie my ties for formal military functions. You'll adapt. Like Lily. Let's hope." As they stepped from the elevator, the initiative staff stood waiting. Educators, psychologists, program coordinators, many of them veterans themselves, selected for their understanding of the challenges facing families like the Millers. "Team, this is Jack Miller, our new Director of Family and Veteran Services," announced Maria Espinosa, the initiative's executive director. "Jack brings a unique perspective as both a Special Forces veteran and the parent of a gifted child in our program." Jack stepped forward, his military bearing evident despite his discomfort with the attention. "Thank you for the welcome. I'm here to learn as much as to contribute. My goal is to ensure that families like mine have the support they need to navigate what can be a challenging transition, not just for the children, but for everyone involved," Robert observed from the background, noting the immediate respect Jack commanded, not from his connection to Robert, but from his authentic understanding of the mission. The staff responded to his unpretentious directness, several of the veterans subtly straightening their posture in unconscious recognition of his military background. As the introductions continued, Robert's phone buzzed with a message from Vanessa. "Quantum computing team needs urgent approval for the Beijing Research Partnership. Also Harrison asking about governance review timeline. Available for briefing this afternoon?" The corporate world asserting its claim on his attention. Robert sent a brief confirmation, then returned his focus to the scene before him. Jack was already engaged in discussion with a program coordinator, his initial nervousness replaced by genuine engagement with the work. "He's going to be excellent," Maria said, joining Robert. "Authentic, grounded, exactly what these families need." "I know," Robert replied, surprising himself with the certainty in his voice. "I'm grateful he accepted the position." "Mr. Chandler, the families arriving next week for orientation. Would you consider addressing them? Many are apprehensive about the program, worried there must be some catch to what seems too good to be true." "Of course. Schedule it for whenever works best for them." As Robert departed for his office downtown, he found himself contemplating the contrast between the initiative's headquarters and the corporate tower that bore his name. Both represented his vision, his resources, his leadership, yet they served fundamentally different purposes and operated according to different metrics of success. The challenge would be integrating these seemingly divergent aspects of his life into a coherent whole, a challenge Harrison and others on the board clearly doubted he could meet. That afternoon, the quantum computing team presented their proposal for a research partnership with Beijing University, a collaboration that would accelerate development of practical applications while navigating the complex geopolitics of international technology sharing. "The potential is extraordinary," explained Dr. Aisha Khan, head of quantum research. "Their experimental results in quantum teleportation complement our work in quantum cryptography. Together, we could be years ahead of any competitor." "Including Reynolds Quantum?" Robert asked. "Especially Reynolds. Lawrence has been trying to establish his own partnership with Beijing for months, but they've held back, waiting to see our approach." Robert studied the proposal, weighing scientific opportunity against security concerns, competitive advantage against potential knowledge transfer risks. 6 months ago, the decision would have been straightforward. Maximize advantage, minimize risk, establish dominance. Now he found himself considering broader implications. The partnership makes sense, but with additional safeguards, he said finally. Establish joint ownership of all resulting patents, with humanitarian applications carved out for open licensing. Medical algorithms, climate modeling, disaster prediction, these should be available to all. Dr. Khan looked surprised. That's an unusual approach, Mr. Chandler. Most companies, including ours historically, have maintained strict proprietary control over all applications. Times change. Technology this powerful comes with responsibilities beyond shareholder value. The afternoon continued with similar meetings, each requiring decisions that balanced commercial interests with the broader perspectives Robert had been developing since Seattle. By evening, when he finally left the office, he felt the weight of navigating between worlds, the ruthlessly efficient corporate leader his board expected, and the more nuanced, reflective person he was becoming. His driver was waiting with the usual black SUV, security protocols still enhanced following the assassination attempt. As they navigated through San Francisco's evening traffic, Robert's phone rang, Jack calling. "How was the first day?" Robert asked. "Overwhelming but good. These people are genuinely committed to the mission." "And Lily," Jack's voice softened. "She's glowing, Robert. Said it's the first time she's been in a class where she didn't have to pretend to be less interested, less curious, less herself. That's what we hoped for. There was a moment today I was picking her up, and she was explaining some science experiment to another girl. They were both so animated, speaking this language of hypotheses and variables that I barely understood. And I realized," Jack paused, "I realized this is what she's been missing. Not just the education, but peers who share her excitement." The simple joy in Jack's voice created a corresponding warmth in Robert. That's the heart of the program. Not just resources, but community, connection. We can't thank you enough, you don't need to. This is just the beginning. After ending the call, Robert directed his driver to change course. Instead of returning to his penthouse, he headed to the neighborhood where Jack and Lily had been settled. A pleasant residential area with good schools and parks, neither ostentatious nor struggling. The foundation had arranged a comfortable 3-bedroom apartment in a secure building, walking distance from Lily's school. Robert hadn't planned to visit, but something in Jack's voice had drawn him, a desire to witness firsthand the impact of the changes they had set in motion. He found them in the building's small community garden, where Lily was carefully transplanting seedlings into a raised bed under Jack's supervision. "Robert!" she exclaimed, jumping up with soil-covered hands. "Look at my tomato plants. The director said I could conduct a growth experiment comparing different fertilizer compositions." "Impressive experimental design," Robert said, examining the careful labels and measurement tools she had arranged. "School was amazing," she continued breathlessly. "There's a girl named Maya who knows everything about marine biology, and a boy named Tyler who built his own telescope. And the science lab has real microscopes, not just the plastic ones from our old school." Her excitement was contagious, her face animated in a way that made her intelligence shine through even more visibly than usual. "And how about you?" Robert asked Jack after Lily returned to her plants. "Settling in?" "Getting there. The apartment feels like a palace after our old place. Lily has her own room for the first time in her life. She's already covered the walls with star charts and circuit diagrams." They watched Lily work, her small hands carefully patting soil around a fragile seedling, her expression one of complete concentration. "I've been thinking about the program expansion," Robert said. "The Seattle cohort is confirmed. 10 children starting next month. We should consider Chicago next, then Atlanta." "One step at a time," Jack advised. "Let's make sure we're getting this right before scaling too quickly. Patience has never been my strong suit, so I've noticed." Jack smiled slightly. "But some things can't be rushed. Building these children's futures is one of them." The wisdom in the observation struck Robert forcefully. His corporate success had been built on decisive action, rapid scaling, aggressive expansion, qualities that had served him well in business but might be counterproductive in this new venture. "You're right. Quality over speed." Later that evening, After sharing a simple dinner with Jack and Lily in their new apartment, Robert returned to his penthouse. The contrast between the homey warmth of their place and the pristine luxury of his own living space was striking. His residence, designed by a renowned architect and featured in architectural magazines, suddenly seemed sterile, more showcase than home. Harrison's warnings about divided focus echoed in his mind as he stood at the window overlooking the city lights. Was it possible to genuinely inhabit these different worlds? Corporate titan and education reformer, strategic businessman and emerging humanist. The question lingered as he prepared for bed, interrupted by a call from Alexander. "Dad, have you seen the Wall Street Journal piece about the initiative?" "Not yet. Good or bad?" "Mixed. They're calling it Chandler's Redemption Project, suggesting it's a response to criticism about your business practices over the years. But they're also acknowledging its potential impact. Predictable angle." "There's more," Alexander continued. "They've dug into Jack Miller's background, his military service, his wife's death from cancer, the financial struggles afterward. Nothing invasive, but they're framing it as a fortuitous connection between power and need." Robert frowned. "Jack won't appreciate the publicity. He's intensely private about Lily." "That's the thing, Dad. They don't mention Lily by name. They refer to Miller's gifted child, but respect the family's privacy. I think someone at the paper is being deliberately careful." After they hung up, Robert located the article online. The reporting was factual, but framed within a narrative of personal transformation following a near-death experience, a simplification of the complex evolution he'd experienced, but not entirely inaccurate. The next morning brought a different perspective on the article. Harrison called as Robert was en route to the office. "This profile makes you look soft, Robert. Sentimental. Is that the image you want to project to competitors? To the market?" "The market responded with a 2-point gain this morning, Harrison. Apparently sentiment hasn't damaged shareholder value. Not yet. But perception matters in our industry. This narrative about personal transformation, about shifting priorities, it raises questions about your commitment to the core business. My commitment is reflected in results, not perception. Results are trailing indicators. Perception predicts future performance." After ending the call, Robert reflected on Harrison's concern. There was truth in it. The tech industry valued a certain ruthless clarity, a single-minded focus on domination and growth. His evolving approach represented a departure from that ethos, one that would naturally generate resistance. The question was whether that resistance reflected genuine strategic concerns or simply discomfort with change, with the challenge to assumptions that had governed the industry for decades. That evening, Robert had dinner with Alexander and his girlfriend, May Lynn, a marine biologist whose intelligence and quiet confidence immediately impressed him. "Your educational initiative is fascinating," May said during the meal, "especially the focus on identifying potential rather than achievement. So much talent is lost because conventional metrics miss non-traditional forms of intelligence." "Exactly," Robert agreed. "The traditional paths, elite private schools, Ivy League universities, prestigious internships, create a closed system that recycles privilege rather than cultivating diverse talent." "This sounds like my son," Alexander said with a smile. "Not my father, the corporate raider." "People evolve," May observed, "often in response to unexpected connections." The conversation shifted to her research on coral reef restoration, then to Alexander's work on carbon capture technologies. Throughout, Robert found himself fully present in a way that had once been rare in his personal interactions, genuinely interested, engaged with the people, rather than mentally reviewing business concerns or strategic plans. As they were leaving the restaurant, Alexander hung back, letting May walk ahead to the car. "Dad, I wanted to say, I'm proud of what you're doing with the initiative. It feels like you're building something that matters beyond quarterly reports." The simple statement, delivered without fanfare, affected Robert more deeply than he expected. "Thank you. That means a great deal coming from you. Mom feels the same way. She said it reminds her of the man she married, before Chandler Innovations consumed everything." The observation lingered as Robert returned to his penthouse. Had success narrowed him, reduced the multiplicity of his interests and connections to a single-minded focus on corporate achievement? had the very qualities that built his empire simultaneously diminished him as a person. These reflections were interrupted by an urgent call from Vanessa. "Robert, we have a situation. Lawrence Reynolds just announced a major quantum computing breakthrough, an algorithm that could potentially leapfrog our current capabilities." Details? Still emerging. Their press release claims a 40% improvement in error correction rates, which would significantly enhance quantum processing stability. If verified, it would give them a substantial advantage in commercialization timelines. "Schedule an emergency meeting with our quantum team for 7 a.m. I want a complete assessment of Reynolds' claims and our response options." The news shifted Robert's focus immediately back to competitive strategy, market positioning, technological advantage, the familiar terrain of corporate rivalry. The seamless transition surprised him, how quickly he could move from philosophical reflection to tactical response. Perhaps Harrison's concerns about divided focus were overblown. Perhaps it was possible to integrate these seemingly contradictory aspects of himself, the strategic corporate leader and the evolving humanist, into a coherent whole. The early morning meeting with the quantum team revealed both challenges and opportunities in Reynolds' announcement. "Their breakthrough is legitimate," Dr. Kahn confirmed, "but limited in application. It addresses one aspect of quantum stability, but creates new challenges in scalability. Can we respond with an accelerated timeline on our own approach? Possibly, but rushing could compromise quality. We need 3 more months of testing before announcing our full system." Robert considered the options. The old playbook would be clear: accelerate development, make a counter-announcement, ensure market perception remained in Chandler's favor regardless of technical realities. But that approach carried risks beyond market positioning, risks to scientific integrity, to the technology's ultimate effectiveness, to the people working under increased pressure. Continue with the original timeline, he decided finally. Issue a measured response acknowledging Reynolds' contribution to the field while emphasizing our complementary approach. No acceleration, no compromise on quality. Dr. Kahn looked surprised. "That's not the response I expected, Mr. Chandler. The quantum computing race isn't a sprint, Dr. Kahn. It's a marathon with profound implications for humanity. I'd rather be right than first." Later that morning, Robert received a text from Jack. "Lily's science teacher wants to meet with us. Says she's advancing too quickly for even their accelerated curriculum. Good problem to have, I suppose." The message provided a timely reminder of what truly mattered amid corporate competitions and market maneuvering. Reynolds might win a news cycle with his announcement, but the real breakthrough, the genuine innovation that would shape the future, might well come from minds like Lily's, minds that would have remained underdeveloped without intervention. That afternoon, Robert joined Jack for the meeting with Dr. Reeves, Westlake Academy's science director, a distinguished physicist who had left academia to focus on gifted education. "Lily's aptitude for quantum concepts is extraordinary," Dr. Reeves explained. "She intuitively grasps principles that challenge graduate students. But our curriculum, advanced as it is, isn't designed for this level of acceleration." "What do you recommend?" Jack asked. "A hybrid approach. Core classes with her age group for social development, but special mentorship in physics and computer science. I'd like to connect her with researchers at Berkeley who work with exceptionally gifted children." Jack looked to Robert, clearly seeking guidance on navigating this unexpected development. "The initiative can arrange whatever resources Lily needs," Robert assured him. "The purpose is to nurture potential, not conform to predetermined paths." "I'm concerned about balance," Jack admitted, "about her having a childhood alongside her intellectual development." Dr. Reeves nodded understanding. "A valid concern. We've seen many gifted children push too hard, too fast. But there's equal risk in constraint, in forcing minds like Lily's to operate below their natural capacity. The frustration can be damaging." "What does Lily want?" Robert asked. "She's asked for more advanced material," Dr. Reeves said, "but she's also 7 years old and eager to please. That's why parental guidance is crucial." As the meeting concluded, Jack and Robert walked through the campus grounds, watching students in Navy uniforms moving between classes. "I never imagined these kinds of decisions," Jack said. "In our old life, the challenge was making rent, and keeping food on the table. Now I'm consulting with physicists about my daughter's education. It's still about what's best for Lily. That hasn't changed. True, but the options have expanded dramatically. Jack shook his head slightly. Sometimes I wonder if she'd be better off if that day in Seattle had never happened, if we'd continued our simple life without all this complexity. Do you really believe that? Jack considered the question seriously. No, she was always extraordinary. She deserves every opportunity to develop her gifts. I just worry about getting it right. That worry is precisely why you will get it right, Robert said. You see Lily as a child first, a prodigy second. Many parents of gifted children reverse that priority. They paused at the edge of the school's garden, where students were engaged in a botany project, carefully measuring and recording plant growth under different conditions. What would Sarah think of all this? Robert asked carefully, aware he was touching on a deeply personal subject. Jack's expression softened. She'd be thrilled about the educational opportunities, concerned about balance like me, amused by how far beyond my depth I often feel. He smiled slightly. And she'd be suspicious of you, probably. Your motives, your influence. Understandable. But she would have come around, I think, once she saw that you genuinely care about Lily as a person, not a project or an obligation. The assessment was more meaningful than Jack could know, a recognition that Robert's involvement had evolved beyond repayment of a debt into genuine connection with both father and daughter. As they left the campus, Robert's phone buzzed with a message from Vanessa. Reynolds requesting another meeting. Says it's about potential collaboration rather than competition. Unusual. The quantum computing rivalry now seemed distant compared to the immediate human concerns he'd been addressing with Jack, yet both were part of his reality, aspects of a life that was becoming more complex, but also more integrated than he had initially believed possible. I have to return to the office, he told Jack. Corporate crisis management. Go, we're fine. Lily and I are having dinner with some of the other initiative families tonight, building community as Maria suggested. As they parted ways, Robert felt an unexpected sense of balance, not the divided focus Harrison had warned against, but a more nuanced engagement with different aspects of a life that was expanding beyond the narrow confines of corporate success. The potential meeting with Reynolds, once a central concern that would have commanded his complete attention, now took its place among other priorities, important but not all-consuming. The educational initiative, once a peripheral project, born of gratitude, had become central to his evolving sense of purpose. The integration wasn't perfect, the balance still precarious, but for the first time since the assassination attempt had disrupted his carefully ordered existence, Robert felt he was moving not between separate worlds, but within a single, more complex reality, one that accommodated both corporate strategy and human connection, competitive drive and compassionate purpose, the leader he had been and the person he was becoming.